I remember someone actually said to me, go get some money. That was such a turning point for me. All I wanted was money. And that's not who I actually was. That's not what I enjoyed to do. I had gone through a breakup and that changed my life. I quit my corporate job and started living authentically to myself.
Why skincare?
Because I had rosacea in high school. And that's when I found my EduvoTalks mask. People loved it. It was in a lot of news articles where they could see the natural thing actually works. Why would you put toxic chemicals on your skin?
What are the biggest misconceptions when it comes to skincare? Victoria.
Hello.
Hi. Welcome to EduvoTalks.
Thank you so
It's
much.
a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
And just first and foremost, Vic, you're a person who somehow, in a world full of filters, manages to stand out. And as we're speaking, your social media accounts are booming, where you're talking about skincare, you're talking about self-love, and in general, just being very, very honest. So just to start, how do you manage to really stay honest in a world that is really pushing for perfection?
That's a great question. And I think it's something that everybody struggles with, just because everyone grows up with expectations, whether it's from their family, whether it's from society. What it takes for me and what it took a long time to realize is I live in my own body. I live for myself. So if I don't do things that feel authentically good to myself, I'm not living with purpose. I'm not living intentionally. I don't feel right. The way it just doesn't feel good to not live authentically and be true to myself.
I see. So would you say there's been a given time when you started your journey as a content creator? I know you started off on TikTok. That was where you really started to build an audience. And more recently, you've really managed to also get your word out there on Instagram. Mm-hmm. Would you say earlier in your social media career that you were struggling more with being as authentic as you are at this point?
In my social media career, no, because when I got into social media, it was a time in my life where I came to the realization I need to be true to what I want and what I want to achieve and succeed in life. So with social media, no. And I credit my success to being authentic on social media. It took quite a while in my personal life to get to that point because, prior to social media, I was in that hustle and bustle New York work culture, and I wasn't living authentic to what I wanted, and I wasn't seeing or feeling the success. So once I pivoted to social media, I found quick success, and that is, I believe, a result of me just kind of saying, okay, F it. I'm just going to be myself. I'm going to live true to myself and put my authenticity onto a screen.
It's very interesting. And you're talking here about a pivot in your life. Mm-hmm. And for some people, there's a certain moment, a certain thing that happens. Has there been at this turning point for you, something that you remember clearly?
Yes. There are quite a number of things I remember very clearly. Two things that stand out the most was once when I was in high school. And little backstory about me, I actually went to high school in Beverly Hills. And in that high school, I was the poor kid. That's kind of how people knew me. And I remember someone actually said to me, go get some money. That was such a turning point for me. My whole mindset changed. All I wanted was money. All I wanted was to get a crazy big job, have a huge salary, and literally I lived for money. And that's not who I actually was. That's not what I enjoyed to do. It was just that moment everything changed. And then I found myself again when I was 22, and I had gone through a breakup, and I was making money. I had a big job in New York, and I said, okay, now I'm going to treat myself. I really wanted to go to Italy for my birthday. No one could join. So I went by myself, And I was by myself for 2 weeks, and that changed my life. That really brought me back to who I was before. You know, someone told me, go get some money. And then after that trip is when I came back, I quit my corporate job, and started living authentically to myself.
It's very interesting how you describe that sometimes the biggest key driver for being motivated is humiliation.
Yeah.
And in your particular case, it led for you to go down a path where you would pursue more money. You wanted what the others had. So what you saw in your environment was all of a sudden what you wanted. And then you get to a point where you go to Italy for 2 weeks and you again choose to pivot. What is it that happens, like being alone for 2 weeks? Can you try to explain a little, what is it that happens to your brain in those particular 2 weeks?
Yeah. I think one, being by yourself, being in solitude is the best way to get to know yourself. That's when you really get to ask yourself the big questions, and there's no expectation on how well you answer. You're just in your own head going through the parts of life that you remember. And so one, I think being in solitude really, really helped me get to the core of who I am. But then also being around life that is so simple. You know, in Italy, especially the non-city parts of Italy, life is really truly so simple. It's farm life, it's Nana's cooking for her family. It's a beautiful, slow, and quiet way of living. And you either really feel comfortable in that or you feel really out of sorts. And so you get to know how you feel in an environment like that. And I felt so comfortable. I felt so at peace. I hadn't felt so good in so long. So that made me realize this is actually what I want. This is what I should be in pursuit of, not this big corporate 9 to 5, because I didn't feel comfortable in it. And being alone made me realize, and it made me listen to how I felt. I wasn't so cluttered with outside noise.
I want to really get back to that about you pivoting from the big job, from living in New York and pivoting into a different purpose. But before we do that, I would like to ask you a little more into your upbringing, because you just mentioned you went to high school in Beverly Hills. You were known as the poor kid. And talk me through that. Like growing up in Beverly Hills, we're talking about living without a filter, and you would argue that that's maybe the place in the world with the most filters.
Yeah.
So take me through your childhood also in a sense to understand that journey you're on right now.
Yeah. So my childhood was amazing. It had its ups and downs. But I am the daughter of a Russian mother and a Salvadorian father. So I always say I grew up with ice and spice. Two contrasts in my life. My Russian mom can be very cold. My Salvadoran father can be very expressive. So that in itself was a very interesting dynamic to grow up with. I also think that's what made me a very, I would say, mediating person. I'm very in the middle. I'm not so extreme about things. And I credit that to having two extremes as examples. But so I'm the daughter of those amazing human beings. And when I was very young, I actually went to a school where I was known as the rich, spoiled kid when I was very young. So elementary school, I was the rich, spoiled kid. And my parents purposely did this, actually. They both had very, very hard lives. And when I was young, they were doing pretty well. And they really didn't want me to be spoiled. So they made sure that I went to a school, you know, where I saw reality. I saw the way other kids lived. And they saw how I lived. So I was the rich, spoiled kid. And then, you know, in America, it does matter what high school you go to get into university. So then my parents moved me to Beverly Hills because that was one of the best public schools at the time. And then I became the poor kid. So two polarizing things, once again, making me very in the middle. And growing up, yes, I was known as the poor kid, but it wasn't, it wasn't so bad, actually. I think maybe I thought it was a bad situation while I was in it, but looking back, it made me very grateful and it made me very driven. So I'm very grateful for that experience. And I needed to go through that to come out on this end. I don't think if I went through that, I would be who I am today. I wouldn't value the things that I value because, I'll say that the conceptions of Beverly Hills is somewhat true. It's a very materialistic place. There's also a beautiful side to it. It's a very family-oriented place. Family wealth, family legacy. So I think I took the best of my situation where now, I like the slow, quiet life. I'm not so into the materialistic side, but I do really respect the family strength where I come from because they do build family legacies, family wealth.
I see. That's very interesting. Would you say that conception of Beverly Hills that you're speaking of has inspired you to have that particular voice that you have today on social media? Do you think actively, well, I have a responsibility to really stay authentic also because of that conception of where you're from?
Actually, no. I don't think that's a huge thought in my head. But that also comes with, I'm from America, but if you ask me where I felt I'm from, I actually don't know what I would say. I feel like I'm just a world citizen. I feel attached to so many places in the world, but I don't feel from somewhere. So I don't feel that growing up in Beverly Hills necessarily pushes me to be more authentic. My push for authenticity, I think, comes from the genuine help that I see it gives people. Me being myself really encourages others to be themselves. So I think that's the main push for me.
It makes a lot of sense. And during that journey, you have somewhat pivoted into also talking a lot about skincare. I think most of your audience, they know you from all your skincare advices. And obviously there's a few different pillars with the self-love and the self-improvement. But skincare is a huge part of who Victoria also is online. So why skincare?
Why skincare? I think, one, I've had a natural skincare routine for quite a while. And when I say natural, I mean made in my kitchen, which most people don't see. And actually, it started because I had rosacea in high school, which, if you don't know, rosacea is tiny red bumps. And I wanted to get rid of it. And my mom, being a very holistic mother, would not let me go to a dermatologist. She would not buy me all these skincare products. So I really had to get into the weeds and do my research. And that's when I found my natural Botox mask, which is just flax seeds and water. And so I've been doing this for quite some time. And, people would watch me do it. My friends would see me do it and they'd say, "What is this? You have to post this online." And I said, "You know what? Okay, I will." And I talked about what it did for my skin. People tried it. People loved it. Absolutely went crazy for it. It was in, a lot of news articles. And I think it's because most of the time when someone recommends something natural, it does take consistency to see results. This one thing, actually, you can see results fairly quickly. So I think that was a big turning point for a lot of young women where they could see, oh, wow, the natural thing actually works.
It's very interesting. And I want to ask you in that regard, because obviously you doing everything natural means that you also probably have some opinions when it comes to unnatural solutions. Mm-hmm. And I just want to ask you, what are the biggest misconceptions when it comes to skincare?
think the biggest misconception when it comes to skincare is that you're actually caring for your skin. It literally is skin care. You know, you should care for your skin. So in my mind, in that same respect, why would you put toxic chemicals on your skin? You know, if you look at the women who are buying skincare, it's actually mainly moms. If you've ever held a baby, they're licking your face, they're biting your face, they're eating that skincare. So I think that to me is the biggest misconception when a skincare product with chemicals is actually labeled as skincare. It's not skincare. It's merely a topical solution, usually to achieve a false result, like anti-aging. There's no such thing as anti-aging unless you really get into your cells and somehow anti-age yourself. That's not going to anti-age you. So I think that's the biggest misconception about skincare. But, with that same sense, I am not so, it must be this way. I do understand not everyone has time, and also not everyone cares. I truly believe in living authentically. If you don't care, by all means, go do it. If it saves you time, if it makes you happier, some women do get joy out of having, 20 different aesthetic skincare products. And if it makes them happy, do it. I'm a big believer in that. Do what makes you happy. Do what makes you feel good.
It's very, very interesting. And I think also on that note, maybe you needed to take a moment to think about this one. But for the mom who just got a baby, or somebody else who's just getting into skincare, if you were to give 3 small tips to get started on how to take care of your skin, what would it be?
Number 1, look at what you're eating. Because as much as, I recommend the topical solutions like the flaxseed mask and other masks that I create, it starts in your gut. It always starts in your gut. If you're eating processed sugar, if you're eating processed foods, you're most likely not going to achieve the skin results that you want. So number 1, look at what's on your plate. Number 2, whatever skincare product you use, turn the bottle around and see how many ingredients that you can actually pronounce or know what it is without going to ChatGPT or Google, and then ask yourself, if I can't pronounce it and I don't know what it is off the top of my head, should I be putting it on my skin? Should my baby be licking it off my face? Probably not. Number 3, don't be scared of trial and error. Women buy so many different skincare products, and I would probably guess they try something new once a month. They try a new skincare product once a month. It's all about trial and error. It's the same with natural skincare. One mask is not going to work the same for everyone. So you also have to respect that you need to go through some trial and error, just like you would with a product on the shelf. You should do with natural skincare.
Okay. It makes a lot of sense. And as you said before, there might also be a time aspect to preparing different natural solutions. Mm-hmm. How much time do you spend on a daily basis on skincare?
On putting the skincare on my face, I would say in total 30 to 45 minutes because I put the mask on and then let it dry. To actually make 20 minutes, but that's not daily. I do it once a week. And then it's ready for the rest of the week. And in those 20 minutes, I can make a flaxseed mask. I can make coffee ice cubes. I can make a lotion. I can make, some sort of mask. So it doesn't take so long, but it's about what that individual person prioritizes in terms of their day. Where do they want to spend these 20 minutes? Maybe they want to spend it on a workout instead of making skincare.
It's interesting to hear this perspective because I think it's very, very opposing to what people will see when they turn on social media today. And we have a lot of different voices within the field of skincare. We have right now a Korean market that is booming within skincare. We've already gone through some of the pros and cons of just buying without necessarily knowing what's inside of the products. If you were to say, I'm now going to the market to buy skincare products, what would I be looking for?
In terms of ingredients or?
Yes, in terms of ingredients, what are the go-to or ingredients to avoid? We can also say that. Which ingredients should I avoid when buying skincare?
Honestly, I will go back to what I said before. If you can't pronounce it, if you don't know what it is, I wouldn't put it on your skin. That's a huge indicator that it's not supposed to be in your body, on your skin. But something for women especially I would avoid. It's not so much in skincare, but it is in almost all makeup. Talc. Talc is a known carcinogen, especially for women. You know, it is linked to breast cancer. So I would avoid that as much as possible. But my main rule is if you don't know what it is, if you can't pronounce it, put it down.
I think that's a great advice.
Yeah. Keep it simple. Simple is always better.
Absolutely. And it goes for a lot of things, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I want to pivot a little away from the skincare because something that stuck a little with me is still at 22, you're working in New York. Mm-hmm. I think the perception of what success is, I think most people would agree that if you at 22 have landed a big corporate job in New York, you're pretty much on track. You say you went to Italy for 2 weeks, but I still want to understand, for you to quit at 22 and embark on a completely different road, how do you manage to make that pivot? I know you went to Italy, but there must be something that there must have been so much fear inside of you. Are you making the right choice when leaving this corporate job, leaving this trajectory that you are on?
Yeah. One thing about me is I'm not fearful. And you know what? That comes from my upbringing and the things that I've had to face when I was young. So actually, when I first moved to New York, it was incredibly hard to find an apartment. And I was paying for myself. So, and if you know anything about the New York rental market, you actually cannot rent an apartment unless you make 40 times the rent. And if you don't, you need a guarantor that makes 90 times the rent. I had neither of those things. So what I did was I had to message every landlord and try to get them to just take money under the table. And it was such a struggle to continue to pay my rent. And truly, it was extremely difficult. I think there were so many nights where I wanted to break down and quit and just drop out of school, get a job, and start paying my bills. Because also in school, I had to do an unpaid internship. So it gave me very few hours to actually make money to live in New York. And I think that experience made me not scared. It really gave me so much confidence in myself that I felt, okay, if I quit my job, I'm still going to figure it out. I always figure it out. I've been thrown lots of problems, and one thing I don't do is fail. I figure it out no matter what. So I just looked at it as this is going to be a new problem, but I'm rested. I just had an amazing time in Italy, and that created such a sense of motivation because I realized this is what I want. I want the slow life. I want the farm. I want to have a strong family. I want to live in nature. And so that's what I was working for. So it was such a strong sense of motivation that I wasn't scared. The only thing that scared me was that I'm going to fall back into a job, not leaving the job. So,
Interesting.
yeah.
And you said earlier that this pursuit of money obviously came from your time in school. What are you looking for today? If it's not money, what are you looking for?
Freedom. And to me, freedom is being able to live, having my necessities. And by the way, I believe that buying things to make you happy or buying experiences that make you happy is an absolute necessity. So being able to do those things while not marching to the beat of someone else's drum. So if I want to wake up and have a slow morning, have a coffee, go to the park, I want to be able to do that. I don't want to have someone calling me and saying, you need to be in a meeting. Let's get this on your Google Calendar. No, I don't want that. So really I'm chasing freedom and land. I want some land in nature. So it is money. It requires money, but it's valued differently.
Makes a lot of sense. And you already made this pivot, at least mentally, at the age of 22. So I think there's a lot of people who can relate, who have probably sat in corporate jobs for much longer. And if you can do it at 22, I'm sure there's somebody out there sitting and saying, "Oh, well, it's probably too late for me." Do you think it's too late at some point?
No, I don't think anything is too late unless you're 9 feet under. So it's all a mindset. Everything is a mindset. I believe you get what you want. It's just a matter of how bad you want it.
So how do you create that mindset, Vic? Because again, mindset is such a complex thing. I think there's a lot of people, if you open your Instagram, then I think every fourth video, there's somebody saying the word mindset or growth. And sometimes these terms can come forward as being quite complex, because what is it actually? What is this mindset that you're talking about? How do you actually get that, have that sort of that courage and that abundance that you had at an early age to really pursue something different than what you initially set out to do?
Yeah. You also have to respect science, I believe. And the truth is that what you tell your mind is what you believe, is what you become. If you're constantly telling yourself, I'm depressed, you will be depressed. If you're constantly tell yourself, I'm strong, I can do this, no problem, I've got this. Even if you don't believe it, and most people don't, I definitely didn't necessarily believe it at first, but I told this to myself enough times where I tricked my brain into believing it. And thus every action I made, whether it be conscious or subconscious, helped me or moved me forward to achieve my goals. So I think when people talk about mindset and they write about mindset and someone on social media is reading it and can't relate to it, or they think it's mumbo jumbo or so out of reach, it's just because they aren't telling themselves these words enough. But I think 2 weeks of telling yourself every single day, I'm going to do this, or I already have this, your mindset will change. And then it's just going to feel so natural. You won't even remember what life was like before.
It all goes back to you never really raise above your own opinion of yourself. And I completely agree. And it's something I want you to elaborate a little on, because if I want to change my mindset now, what do? Do I go home, stand in front of the mirror and just start telling myself, you're amazing? Or where do I start?
Yeah, that also depends on the person. I think some people, for example, me, I wouldn't feel comfortable standing in front of the mirror and saying, I'm amazing. That's just not my personality. I would say, position yourself in a setting where you feel most comfortable. For me, that's anywhere near the ocean. I feel most comfortable near the ocean. Sit down in complete solitude. Don't talk to anyone. Don't listen to music. You're sitting down with yourself. Be intentional about what you are doing. So number one, find the setting. that you feel most comfortable in. Number 2, I would just start having a conversation with yourself. Ask yourself, where do you want to be in 5 years? And then kind of go through, okay, how am I going to get there? What do I do to achieve this? Then you have that. Then lastly, I'm going to do it. I am going to do this. No matter what, I'm going to do this. If this is what I want, I'm going to get it because this is my life and I can do it. And just motivate yourself. You know, if you say, I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it, odds are in 5 years, you're going to do it.
One thing I think that is inevitable to speak of at some point is your social circle, your environment. Because one thing is living by the ocean and living in solitude in Italy for 2 weeks, but you must have some pretty cool people around you to also have the strength to really go down this road. Can you take me through that?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, my circle, they're my biggest champions, I would say. And that's because I'm extremely intentional about who I spend my energy and my time with. And, you know, it goes back to the saying, show me your network and I'll show you your net worth. It is so true. You know, the people you spend your energy on ultimately are such a big factor in whether or not you achieve your goals. You know, you should be around people who are inspiring you, are championing you, who want to celebrate you. Because oftentimes it's the people in your closest circle who can be the most detrimental to your goals. And actually what I would say is, one thing I find that's very true is the moment you start a business or something on your own, you really get to find out who are your champions, who loves you, who is there for you. Because, you know, they say that your clients become your friends before your friends become your clients. So in that respect, it's so true. In your environment, you have to be so intentional with who you keep in that environment.
Would you say that a lot of your environment has changed throughout the years?
For sure. I can see the phases of myself in the circles that I kept in. You know, when I was in New York and in that hustle and bustle culture, I would say I had close friends, but we were close because we loved to dance together and have drinks together. And when it came down to the real things that make life worth living, we didn't share those moments together. You know, that was more spent in solitude. And versus now, I'm with I don't even want to call them friends. They're not friends, they're family. They feel like family to me. I want to spend every moment with them, not just the highs, but also the lows. I want them in my corner when something I want to dissect or something in my life is happening that I want to dissect. I want them in that room. Usually, or prior, I wanted to be alone in a room.
How do you know at some point that there's people that you just want in your corner, regardless of the circumstances? Because you had circles before, prior to the circle that you're with now, I assume. How do you know that this is different? What is the difference?
Honesty and authenticity. I think that's what separates a friend and a close friend. A close friend will have the uncomfortable conversation with you. A close friend will tell you things that might make you feel uncomfortable, but they're only saying to make you grow. They're not saying it with the intent to put you down or hurt you. They're saying it with the intent to watch you blossom. Versus, I don't think just a friend or an acquaintance would have the uncomfortable conversation, because it is uncomfortable for everyone, not just the person you're giving feedback to, but also the person actually giving the feedback. It's very uncomfortable. So that's how I differentiate a friend versus a good friend, is the good friend will push me, even if it's a job in itself to push me.
It's very interesting that you are talking about great friends as being somebody who has great, like the best of intentions for you, but who also understands that they have a responsibility to be honest and authentic with you. Would you say throughout your life or in general people's lives that you also have to get to a place where you can have great friends, where you can be a good friend? Because I'd imagine if you had met somebody who was this honest and this authentic to you when you were maybe 17, maybe you would react to it. So do you think also that's like a phase that you need to get to a point where you can really attract like-minded people who just wants to see you blossom?
100%. You also need to be in a space in your life where you're open to receiving feedback. Some people cannot take it. That's just the truth. And it makes sense. Human beings are highly sensitive, and sometimes they cannot take feedback, even if it's meant with the best of intentions. You have to get to the place where you're open to having those conversations because you actually want to grow. Growth is uncomfortable. It's so true. I mean, think about it when you're a child and you're physically growing. You're uncomfortable, like you're in pain. You know, you want to throw tantrums because you don't know what's happening in your body. It's uncomfortable. All growth is uncomfortable. So you have to do the inner work. You need to get to the place where you can receive it. And for, many years, I wasn't open to receiving it. I just was so pinpointed in the direction that I wanted to go. I felt that any feedback was just an obstacle to get there. And then after I did some inner work and I spent time in solitude and had conversations with myself and was able to observe, the relationships that elders had or that people I admired had, that's when I realized, oh no, the people in your circle who will have the most impact on your life will have those tough conversations because they are like family, family fights. Yeah.
So you're also saying that you should not be afraid to change your social circle as you grow up. I think a lot of people are very scared that if you were to replace or change your social circle as you grow up, it might feel like you're better than your friends. In your life, how has that felt? Obviously, coming from LA to now living a very, very different life, far away from Los Angeles. How has that challenged you on your journey? That you've changed your social circle? Is this something that goes through your mind?
Definitely. And for a long time I felt that there was something wrong with me and that it was bad that I wasn't friends with people from my childhood. Don't get me wrong, I do have a friend or two that I have had from childhood, but you see people have friendships, their entire friend circle is from birth. One being from LA, I would actually say that's not so common. In Los Angeles, I would say the friendships are a bit more shallow, and thus people are able to go from a different circle to another. But that's not community. And one thing I was seeking was a deep sense of community. And I think it wasn't so difficult for me once I realized that I needed to have a strong circle if I wanted to achieve my goals. It wasn't even something that I looked at as a want or a desire. It was a necessity. So that's what made it so easy for me to kind of pivot friend circles, because those friend circles weren't serving me. They weren't serving my purpose or the goals that I had. And I didn't exit with any bad blood or any strife. I think people forget that you can leave the room in a very kind and positive way. It's just not the room that you're meant to be in. It's all about how you do it. But actually, leaving these friendships it doesn't have to be a bad thing.
And of course, when we're talking about social circles and your environment in general, you mentioned that you went through a breakup also, and it doesn't get much closer than the significant other, than the partner. So talk me through that. How has that also affected your life, your love life, your relationships, past relationship to now?
So my partner that I broke up with at the time, amazing guy, honestly. Just not amazing for me and what I wanted in life. I am such a curious person. I wanted to see the world. That's why I immediately, went to Italy by myself. I needed to fill that curiosity. He wasn't. So there wasn't an alignment. And it wasn't a bad breakup. It was just we weren't aligned. And that goes back to it doesn't have to be bad to end things. And so through that breakup, and one thing that really actually stuck with me through that breakup was a lot of my friends at the time telling me, why did you break up with him? He was such a good guy. You'll never do better. He's the best guy in the world. And I thought that was so crazy. I remember in my head, he's an amazing guy, just not for me. And people take that factor out, the self. People forget about that. So I was very much in the sense, amazing guy, not for me. And I've met tons of amazing people. They're just not amazing for me. And that's okay. And then fast forward to the relationship that I'm in now, I don't think that I could paint a better person for me. And one of the biggest reasons is because he pushes me. He pushes me to be my best self. And actually, a lot of the things that I've done now and recently are a result of him championing me and motivating me to do things, because there are times where, okay, I don't want to do this. I'm scared of doing this. No, you got this, babe. Do it. And that's what's so important, is having someone who's going to motivate you and going to inspire you. And he doesn't just motivate me. He also teaches me as I teach him, we each inspire each other.
It's such a big thing, holding each other accountable.
Yeah.
And you said it yourself, on paper, you had a past relationship that people from the outside would consider to be amazing, an amazing partner, which you also say he is. But there's just no alignment. Mm-hmm. And for you and for your vision of freedom, of where you want to go in life, you found somebody who wants that future, who wants to create that scenario. And that is the bigger difference I hear.
Yeah. A shared goal builds a very strong relationship between romantic partners. Mm.
It's also very interesting from the male perspective, when somebody is driven as the partner you have now. That is such a big thing of how he loves, how he falls in love. Is somebody who shares his goals, and I hear it's the same for you. So you basically fall in love with each other over a common goal, a vision you can share together. And I think that is something that not a lot of people they verbalize, that this is why we are together, not just because we met in high school.
Yeah,
right.
That's true. Yeah, I think it's so important to have the conversation of where you want to be and how you actually plan on getting there. Because it's one thing to want this, but it's an entirely other thing to actually get there. And you also both have to be on the same page where this is our plan. Our plan is likely not going to go as planned. So then it comes with, how do we handle tough situations? That is a partner. It's, people say 50-50. Sometimes it's 80-20. And other times it's 70-30. That's what being a partner is showing up when sometimes your partner is falling behind and picking them up not leaving them behind. And I feel that's what I've found. And, you know, every day is intentional. We talk about our goals, I would say pretty much every single day. I can't remember a day we haven't talked about what we want to do or what we're doing today or what we're looking forward to next week, because it's going to bring us closer to our goals.
One thing that comes to mind when I'm hearing this, Vic, is the best-selling author Simon Sinek. He made the theory of the golden circle, where he says it starts with why. And in your why is pretty much aligned. You have this great vision of freedom, of a life that brings you all around the world. And as you said, the plan can change. How you're going to do it, it can change. What you're particularly doing can change. I think that's a great way to start, whether it's in a relationship or in a business setting or any team effort, really, when you need to align. And it seems like you guys really, really set a solid why together.
That's for sure. It took a lot of uncomfortable conversations.
Yeah, I'd imagine. So the last thing I want to ask you on that note, Vic, so in 5 years, what does that life look like when you and your partner today sit and visualize?
When me and my partner sit and visualize our life in 5 years, you know, we live in Bali right now, full time. We want to live half in Bali, half in Italy. You know, that's my dream. Having the farm, growing everything myself, living that slow, quiet life with lots of kids, as many as I can possibly carry in 5 years. And then the other time in Bali, where he's building a beautiful, amazing project called Energy, which will be the ultimate health, wellness, fitness destination, which, you know, that's another thing about our partnership is he's so inviting into his life and he's so open to inspiration, where actually there is a building called Blue Zones that is dedicated to longevity practices, Ayurveda, and just bettering your health, all the things that I'm interested in. So he's so gracious to have given me a very big part to play in that. So half in Bali, half in Italy, and hopefully, no, not hopefully, in 5 years, I will have a natural skincare line that is completely edible. That's something I'm actually working on right now behind the scenes. But in 5 years, I imagine that we will have ultimate freedom. And I say these things and what we'll be doing, but who knows what we'll be doing. I believe we'll be doing whatever we want because we have that freedom.
That's beautiful. That's a beautiful vision. Lots of kids, lots of freedom.
Yes. Well, yes, I'll be very free with a bunch of children.
Yeah.
I was an amazing child. My children will be just as amazing.
All right, Vic. I think that's it. That's it for today. And thanks for going all the way around all the different aspects of your life, from the romantic side to your upbringing and to what you're doing right now. So thanks so much for being here today.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me.